like, so I'm Jewish, and Jews are mostly,
Really?
I know, isn't it weird? I'm the only ginger Jew, I know. It's,
That'd be a good wrestling, like, gimmick.
That is
it can't
racist.
be a halo of, I mean, then it's anti-Semitic if the villain is Jewish.
Well, no, because the ginger part makes you.
Oh, okay, that's fine. No, but is this being recorded?
Yeah.
Good, well, all right. No, but if you look at the history of that community, it's the same thing. It happened with the Irish as well. You start by making fun of your community in public so people can laugh along with you, and that's sort of like the lichens on the rock that allow for the tree to come. It takes time for people to become comfortable with these things, and unfortunately, kind of the way you have to do it is to start with humor. So I almost am wary of critiquing too hard to get in the way of the process happening, because I think you have to start breaking things down before people can get comfortable, and it sucks, but it sucks to be patient when you know you're right now, but I wonder if it's just something that has to happen to get to the good thing.
And in the meantime, we can champion, I mean, like Orange is the New Black has done such an amazing job, at least in my humble opinion, in terms of at least getting conversations going in mainstream and showing us, like, I don't know, showing us a sign that, I feel like Piper is the most obnoxious, least relatable character on that show. And she's she is female, but like, she's the person of privilege. Yeah.
I don't want
your
you
question,
to
by the way. All right. Wasted on you. That's a good show. It's a really good show. It's on
Yeah,
Netflix.
it's a-
I've heard it's great.
It's great.
Wait, really? Does anyone know? Have you guys seen Orange is the New Black?
Yeah.
It's an amazing show.
Yeah.
Hey, jeez. This is gamers, but come on, guys. Such a little TV. All right.
So you spoke a lot about the importance of the open internet and a neutral internet, and I wholly agree. I'm just very curious, in what form do you think that's actually going to take? Do you see it more as kind of like a legislative push where we're actually going to have FCC-type regulations? Do you see it more as like a UK kind of model where we force companies like Comcast to lease the fiber out?
Yeah.
I'm just really curious, like, how do you envision kind of ensuring an open internet for all?
There is no easy answer to this one, man. Honestly, I think this is going to be a fight for a very long time, because in the broadest definitions of open internet, it's not just about a neutral playing field. It's also about a world where our online privacy is respected by our government, by others. It's to answer the question about net neutrality. The big push right now, and the one that I think is really the most attainable, is getting broadband reclassified as Title II. Which basically explicitly says that the ISPs cannot discriminate. It says they can't do fast lanes and slow lanes. It says they can't turn your broadband internet into like cable television where you get like default search is Bing, and like $10 a month more gets you Google, and $30 a month more gets you DuckDuckGo. Or the bullshit deals that like Comcast has now done with Netflix, basically extorting them and saying, yeah, your traffic really sucks. You could fix that by paying us more. That Title II would explicitly stop and give the FCC the authority to explicitly stop ISPs from doing that kind of discrimination, broadband ISPs. But it's still just one step for a long ways to go.
Would the Title II actually provide more privacy protections, as you said?
What was it? Sorry, what was the first
Would
part?
Title II provide more privacy protection, or would it
Not
just
at
be
all.
for the traffic?
Yeah, it's just for traffic. When it comes to privacy, in theory, would be counting on our legislature to be passing laws, which at least the House isn't. Actually, Zach wrote a really good piece about that recently. You guys should all read it. What's it? It's on Medium, right?
For Medium, yeah.
How'd you post it on Medium?
Because I work for the NIB, it's a cartoonist political thing.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
I was right. Anyway, you should read Zach's thing on Medium about it. But that's going to take legislative action. I mean, I suppose the president can do it, but he's not going to do an executive action for it now. It's got to come from Congress.
It wouldn't be permanent anyway, but and why would the executive lessen its own power? That'd be crazy.
That'd be ridiculous.
What you do is you
It'd be
start
like George
yeah.
Washington not wanting to run for another
A
term.
third office, yeah.
Who would do that?
Who would do that? Stupid, yeah.
But also, the most important thing we can all do, seriously, I know this seems really hackneyed, but just like be involved. Like really. Like, I know it's easy to dismiss an upvote or a like or a retweet, and yeah, it's not the same as actually doing real activism like protesting or marching or any of that, but it does make a difference. It really does go a long way towards that like push of normalcy. Like, it really does go a long way to showing people, like, you know what, actually, that friend, they care about this issue.
Like when the CIA Twitter account makes fucking jokes about how you have no privacy.
That's fucked up.
You should be pissed. You
Don't
should
retweet
retweet it like you're a goddamn idiot.
Yeah, that stuff matters.
It does.
Fuck that guy. Okay.
Or don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to enforce patriarchy, Zach.
Hi. So I spend far more time on Reddit than I should, or that I want to admit. So thank you, maybe.
Thank you.
One of the things I've noticed is that there's a very clear shift in the subreddit culture. Like some subreddits are really welcoming and they're kind of supportive, and friendly, and other ones are very much not. And so in particular, I've noticed that in the default subreddits, for example, if the original poster is a liar or doesn't follow through, the pretty much constant refrain is OP is a fag, like without fail. And when I or anybody else says, hey guys, I thought this was supposed to be welcoming space, they're like, well, you're a fag too. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were on ways to combat that, in particular in the default subreddits.
Okay, well, one, that stuff is obnoxious. There was actually a study published recently by some random person on the internet that shows the usage of that, and it's actually gone down, which is a little heartening. But to answer the question specifically, one of it's just to get rid of defaults altogether. This is a hangover. I wish they weren't even called subreddits, because it implies, the reason was they started as subdomains, like gamers.reddit.com, and then we came up with the r/nomenclature, which just makes a lot more sense. The defaults are just there because 7 years ago we only had like 20 active communities on Reddit. Now there are 500,000. So if I had my druthers, it would work more like Twitter. And so a new user would simply say, I'm interested in this, that, and the other, and subscribe to the things they're into. None of us have to follow the Westboro Baptist Church on Twitter. They're there on Twitter, but we don't have to deal with it. And it would solve, I think, a lot of the problems that the mainstream communities have, because they have millions upon millions of users, and you get this unfortunate echo chamber on the internet, whether it's YouTube or any site with critical mass that has millions and millions of people commenting, that we don't have a great solution for. Good moderation does a great job of it. It just, if we didn't have default subreddits, they wouldn't have the clout that they would have, and we wouldn't have to deal with that. There would be, there would be an RPix alternative that would have millions of subscribers, but would actually have moderators who would force stuff like that, behavior like that. So it's not by any means a perfect system, but I do think it's a move forward as we continue to add more subreddits to the front page, and then one day, again, if I have my way, there is no more default, or at least it does. It's not just 50 subreddits. It's just everything.
Thank you.
Going back into sort of the more net neutrality stuff, I basically completely agree with everything in the U.S. of getting into Title II and the privacy issues. Of course, though Congress seems to be more interested in actually spying on us. I think I'm maybe more worried about them than Google.
Yeah, they've got guns and tanks.
Yeah, but I'm really conflicted about the net neutrality stuff outside of the U.S. in a lot of places, or outside of the Western world. I work at Wikipedia, and we have Wikipedia Zero there, which is where we have a lot of conflict, because in many ways it's asking for people, especially mobile companies, to just allow Wikipedia for free. Because we're just trying to get more access. But of course that is essentially also anti-net neutrality in many ways. And the conflict between trying to get free access to the internet, or get more access, sort of get more knowledge out there, and then trying to make sure it's on the even playing field. And I've been concerned with a lot of the places that are actually passing what we would generally see as better net neutrality laws like that are in countries where in fact they don't really have sort of free, or at least a large portion of the community doesn't even have access to the internet at all. And so I'm interested in seeing what you guys think about the balance there. Wow. In the US, it's easy. We have lots of money. We know what we're doing.
This is, well, we mostly know it. Well, kind of know what we're doing.
More so.
Wow. This is really the deep end of my knowledge pool. Like, I lived in Armenia. I lived in the motherland for 3 months, and that's the only country I can speak to with any bit, and it's just such a clusterfuck there. There aren't enough people there to really care about the internet being level, because there aren't enough people with regular internet access. But I think, okay, the thing I do know is that for better or for worse, the United States sets a precedent for lots of countries, and when it comes to technology legislation, and I can only imagine what it's like to be in your position, because you all do have, I mean, it's the mission of Wikipedia to educate the world. And the internet is a global platform, but in the wake of more and more stupidity on the part of our overreaching government, more and more countries, even countries like Brazil and Germany, are talking very seriously about cordoning off and sort of balkanizing the internet, building their own. And it hurts my heart to think about an internet that's balkanized, because it's the antithesis of why it's so amazing. But yeah, so unfortunately the best thing I can tell you is I hope we don't fuck it up here that badly.
I agree.
Zach? No, that's it. Don't fuck it up like we're doing every day.
I'm going to go a bit further back to when we were talking about Kickstarter crowdfunding. I believe Pantheon?
Patreon.
Patreon. It's something I haven't heard of, but I'm kind of getting the gist of it. It's sort of a monthly fee. With the idea of oversaturation and lots of creative people, creative enterprises showing up on Kickstarter, read-only memories included. How do you guys foresee within your own fields and within creative endeavors in general, that sort of overpouring of talent, of content, of asking for money, of trying to live as artists, as creators through these different methods? How do you see that people standing out, or like, will it reach a certain plateau of people being able to do it and others not being able to do it, to trying to find gimmicks, to certain communities like the gaming communities sort of supporting projects like Read-Only Memories, and then having a whole other slew of other projects fall into place, and some not get funded, some get funded, and they're being resented. Like, how do you foresee this future of mass creative projects looking for money on the internet? And what are your thoughts on how that will all play out? All three of you, like webcomics included and gaming included.
I'm very optimistic, just in general. So I'm just gonna, maybe 50% of crowdfunding campaigns don't hit their goal right now on Kickstarter and the like. And I have no sense. Patreon's a little less binary because it's just, you sort of grow into it. But what gives me so much hope is that we're entering an economy where there are gonna be, I don't think robots are gonna do all the jobs, but software is in itself, like a developer sitting in front of her computer and does the same thing twice, she writes code, so she has to do less work. Software reduces the need for human labor in so many ways. And I think one of the big challenges we're gonna have in the next 10, 15 years are, it's gonna be a great time for software developers, hope you're doing it. And if you're not, we're gonna have a lot fewer jobs, traditional jobs. And so where I'm hopeful is, there's a dude right now named Smooth McGroove who lives in Oklahoma City. He's also a Black Cat owner, so we have a bond there. And he makes a cappella video game theme song videos. So like, it's amazing. He's very, very talented. I'm not doing him justice. Yep.
What's that
Clearly.
even?
Really doesn't work. The point is, I think right now he's making about $2,500 a month, or a video on Patreon. So if he produces one video a month, that is what, 10, 20, maybe 25 grand-ish a year right now? Ish. Math is not good for me. He lives in Oklahoma City. And what's cool is he didn't have to move to Los Angeles, he didn't have to move to New York. He lives in a city where the cost of living is much lower. In another 6 months, he's probably going to be able to do this as his full-time gig and just be amazing at making great a cappella video game theme songs. Now, I would have never thought there was a niche to sustain a guy. No record label ever would have given this guy a contract, for sure. But even I didn't think there would be this community of people willing to give this guy money to make his art. But it turns out I don't fucking know anything. And I really see it as an almost infinite number of sort of niches and artists. I think it's going to be a long way until we exhaust all of them. And I think if there are, if there's hope, I think if there's hope for people like Zach, and there's hope for people like Smooth, I really do hope that we can find more and more avenues for people who have a passion in creating something to find an audience.
Yeah, to add to that, if you were alive in the year 1900, you'd be making, if you were a median person, a statistical individual, you'd be making about 1/8 of what you make now, and you would spend about 1/3 of what you spend now on entertainment, right? Your budget for entertainment has grown over time. People spend a lot more on entertainment than they used to. It makes sense, we're more productive, we can spend more on entertainment. That means there's a bigger entertainer class, and that trend has been very robust over the last 100 years. There's reason to believe it should continue. So I think it's probable, you can't talk as if there's a single pie we're all eating from. The pie is growing. Of course, to take a little off that, the dystopian version of that, there's an economist named Tyler Cowen who wrote a bit about this, but if robots take most of the jobs, what remains is jobs that only people can do. So artists is a nice version of that. It could be, for example, there could be a lot of people whose job is to be life coaches, to go to people like me who have a job that pays money and say, aren't you great? So that would be an ugly version of us all doing jobs that only people can do, because it doesn't work if a robot tells you you're great. So I do believe the pie is expanding, and I think we're in a much better time for entertainment. I mean, if you were a musician in the year 1900, you just do live gigs, it would suck. It's much better now. And it's getting better all the time, and it's a very robust trend. So I think I'm optimistic. There is an ugly version of it that may exist, but overall positive, yeah.
Cool. So we actually only have a couple minutes before the Dogecoin panel. So I do want to take all 3 questions. So if you can really quickly ask your question, and we will go.
Okay, sure. Well, actually, I think I have a question for all 3 of you.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, just a question for Alexis.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
What I was really hoping for you to talk more about would be Bread Pig, and specifically that your philosophy of the unincorporation. Because I had no idea you were also an investor in Patreon, which supports a lot of activists, and I support certain comic artists. His name is Ryan North.
Nice.
That's where
Ryan is
anyway, so yeah, Patreon supporting activists, like Reddit, also is involved in a lot of activism, and of course the Bread Pig is an unincorporation itself where they donate a lot of their profits to charity. I'm wondering if you could talk more about that philosophy of the unincorporation, or if you see more companies instead of just being profit as the main motivator, being more motivated to stick a neck out there and support, there's a lot of sponsors back there, but companies where, supporting more activist stuff and profit's not the main driver.
Okay, so it's weird, the entire Bread Pig business model, that basically just happened because ex-KCD, Randy, I bugged him into letting me publish his book. And at the time I was just like, this seems really fun, I want this to exist in the world, and we don't need the profits because I'm doing well, so let's just donate them for literacy, because if we have a bunch of kids who can't read, they'll never buy the book. So obviously we're going to donate to a nonprofit that helps kids read so they can one day grow up to buy the book. It was kind of a joke like that, and we just kept doing it, and then before long it turned out we had a real company, and then I found amazing people like Christina Shih, and now George Roack, who are actually running it, making it all happen. But look, I think it's really just, it is just a reflection of what is happening in the broader world right now. More and more people, this sort of next generation of, I think, makers and creators, because we're closer to the people who actually give us a reason to wake up in the morning and do what we love, we feel a different kind of obligation to our society and to our fans and to our everyone. And I see this across, you don't have to look too far, you see this across so many different industries now. So many of the artists that I get to work with are just really excited about not only being able to make what they love, but also are really proud of doing something great for their fans, and then also are looking for ways to give back. So I think it's just more reflective of this generation of makers. Obviously this is a generalization, but there's nothing that interesting, in my opinion, about the model that we did, because it's just following in line with so many others. I mean, fucking Paul Newman was doing it with salad dressing 30, 40 years ago, and I think one of the things that really struck me, and I'll leave it on this, was there was a New York Times article maybe 3 or 4 years ago about, it was trying to comprehend or help old people understand Kickstarter, and I'm really painting broad strokes here, but it was the reason people give on Kickstarter is not necessarily because of the widget, it's because of the spirit of it. It's because of the whatever. And it was trying to describe this and articulate this thing for a generation that didn't quite understand why someone would give something to a project that may not even come to fruition 8 months later. But it's something that, for those of us who are more attuned to, I think, the net and this new way of thinking about ourselves as creators and makers and communities, feels very natural. And I think that's going to continue to shine through so many new projects going forward.
It's awesome.
Thank you. So if your questions are short, you should do it. If you want to ask a longer question, you should wait. Because we're going to stay on this panel. So if it's a short question, just ask it now.
You can tweet too.
Oh, had to. I'm not that tall. Whatever. Yes, I want to know where the secret store where I can redeem my karma is.
There is none, I'm sorry. So all that time is wasted.
More, I guess this can be answered quickly. More seriously, though, is a question of the potential of some of the subreddits or subgroups, I guess, to grow into larger movements, kind of like GaymerX has here, and just the idea of kind of how much involvement does Reddit take into these cases, or in more unpleasant cases, in the case kind of opposite, you know, if some sort of hate group uses it as a platform to grow, kind of, how do you respond to, you know, these things growing out of Reddit?
I mean, I'm always the first to be like, listen, I love seeing stuff like this, but I don't dare take any credit for it. Like you wouldn't, if you were sitting there, during the I Have a Dream speech, you wouldn't be like, man, that microphone is doing an amazing job. Hell of a microphone. Whoever made that microphone, like, we are a platform, a tool, and I think we take the same approach as Twitter and others in that, for better or for worse, if it is protected speech in the United States, we don't endorse it, we don't support it, but we let it be because we know that we're this sort of printing press. We are this platform. And look, I'll tell you, almost 500,000 communities now exist on the platform, 500,000. And the vast majority are benign or even really good. And that's a reflection of users. It's always been a reflection of users. And yes, even if I were a hammer maker or a printing press maker, I would hope that it gets used for benign or good things most of the time. At the end of the day, that's pretty much all the control I have. But I don't dare take credit for any of the cool stuff that people are doing because people do it. And you know, and if it's people doing not cool things and wrong things, well, if there are areas where they are breaking the law, then we do what we need to do and we take action. But if it is legal, it remains.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's the last question.
No.
But I was wondering if there's any advice or like for Patreon, like is there any advice for starting up or any hints or?
Are you going to start one, by the way?
Yeah.
If you start one, and actually for all of you, I'm not going to regret this, everyone tweet at me with your Patreon page and I will back you. Yes. I'm not going to be like your $100 a month back.
I'm doing it right now.
I just want to encourage you guys to do it.
Do you have a business card? Because I don't have a smartphone.
Oh,
so
just Alexis at Reddit, or on the Twitters at just at Alexis Ohanian.
Okay, thank you.
But wait, Zach will give you actual feedback.
Oh, actual feedback. Do you have a pre-existing audience of any kind?
Yes, I got 2,000 followers on one thing and some other followers on another.
Okay, so that's a good start. Yeah, I mean that's I usually tell people the most important thing is you got to do that legwork first, where you get people to care about your stuff. The only alternative is that you have some really clever hook. If you have both, even better. But I really think that's the main thing. I would say, I don't know if you'll appreciate this advice I'm about to give, but you know, don't give away too much on Patreon. And I say that though because your supporters are there for you. You know, so I probably shouldn't tell this because it's kind of embarrassing, but like one of my reward levels at Patreon is a $5 level, and we have hundreds of subscribers. And so the reward at that level is I do a draw by request, I'll draw whatever you want session. Last time I did it, nobody showed up. No, it's not sad at all, it's free money. But that surprised me, because this is 100 people who are parting with money, like a pretty decent amount of money per month to be there, but I think that either they're just like, they don't check their email, or more likely I think they just like supporting, and that's the main thing. You're giving people a chance to be part of what you do, so don't feel like you have to go out of your way to be good to them. Yeah, they're there for you. You know, they're already there for the thing you're already making. So don't lower your bandwidth as a creator, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome. So we're about to get into our next panel, but don't forget,